Well, I think we're live, so I think we can get started. So thanks for coming, everybody, and online, thanks for coming. So welcome to the Conservation Law Enforcement panel discussion. So this is something we wanted to organize so that folks could ask questions of people from different agencies. The first thing I'd love to hear is just who you are, the agency you work for, what your position is. So let's start here.
My name is Kyle Hladek. I'm a game warden for the Maine Warden Service. I've been a game warden for about 8 years.
My name is Kevin Adam. I work for Baxter State Park and I'm a district enforcement ranger there.
My name is Malcolm MacDonald. I'm a ranger at the Hancock office, so I cover Hancock County and Southern Penobscot County.
Forest ranger.
Yes, forest ranger. Yes. Yeah, there's a difference.
The word ranger gets confusing.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons we wanted this panel discussion. Sometimes, oh, welcome.
Oh, I'm so late, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Awesome. Pull up a chair right over there. That's perfect. You can definitely blame it on our parking.
Whoa.
Totally me.
Yeah, that is totally fine. We just started.
All right.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would you mind telling us who you are and where you're coming from?
My name is Darren Belskis. I'm the Deputy Chief Ranger at Acadia National Park.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for being here. I'm so glad. So one of the things that I think not all of you know who I am, but I'm Lauren Jacobs. I am a lecturer in outdoor leadership here at UMaine. So I teach a lot of outdoor leadership courses. And one of the things that I hear from students a lot is they don't necessarily know the difference between different conservation law enforcement positions and what it means to work for different agencies. So that's why we're trying to get a good mix of folks here to represent. So if you could just tell me a little bit like what your duties are and what your agency's mission is. So I'll start with you.
So the Maine Warden Service, our mission is conservation law enforcement primarily. So we enforce hunting, fishing laws. We also do search and rescue throughout the state of Maine, deal with wildlife conflicts between just human wildlife interactions, and enforce recreational vehicle laws such as ATV, snowmobile, boating, those types of laws. We're full-time state law enforcement officers, so we have the same duties and powers that any other state law enforcement would have, but our primary role is those conservation related tasks that I explained.
Yeah.
So as a district game warden, I am assigned a portion of the state. So in my district, I have 10 towns that I cover, and I'm responsible for all those activities in those 10 towns. And each day depends on the season, but I go out and work in some area of my district on one of those enforcement tasks.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about what it means at Baxter.
So Baxter, really the same thing that Kyle's doing, game wardens, okay, and be on a smaller scale, just in the park. We know the park is 210,000 acres. And really our job is to be the enforcement arm of what Governor Baxter wanted for Baxter State Park. So there are specific rules and laws to Baxter. Basically the preservation versus recreation matrix. And so we deal with that. We deal with, we have many heritage waters, Brook Trail heritage waters in the park. So we're doing fishing game enforcement. We have hunting areas in the park. Plus we have to deal with about 80,000 visitors that come in and the things that are associated with that. So we're our own little police force inside Baxter State Park. We have all the same powers as every other state law enforcement. And there's currently about 7 of us right now. So
7 enforcement officers.
7 enforcement officers,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so as a forest ranger for the state, my job is kind of split half into fire and half into law enforcement. So our primary mission as a forest ranger is wildfire suppression for the state. So that essentially means any wildland fire in the state, we kind of have final authority on suppression, documentation. We also do wildfire investigation. So whenever there's a wildland fire, we have to do our own investigation and determine what the cause of the fire was, if we can. As well as if there's a fire in the unorganized territory, we have to be the ones that are suppressing it. So we'll call our call-needed firefighters, use our own equipment that we have to suppress the fire. As well as that, we do forestry laws, so timber theft, unlawful cutting of trees, that kind of thing. We also dabble a bit into ATV enforcement, snowmobile enforcement from time to time when we come across it. But just we're sworn law enforcement officers like any other agency. It's just we're a little more focused on our mission, which is primarily wildfire and kind of forestry, conservation law enforcement. So yeah.
So I work for Acadia National Park, which is a unit of the National Park Service. National Park Service mission is to conserve and preserve the natural resources of your park units across the country. So for future generations, that's the primary purpose of the Park Service. So specifically at Acadia National Park, we're somewhat like Baxter. We have our own quote unquote law enforcement rangers, our own mini little police force, but we specialize. We're federal law enforcement officers, so we have full arrest authority, enforce specific rules and regulations for the park. But we can also adopt and assimilate any state law that we don't have a federal law for. The caveat with that is our powers are limited to the boundaries of the Park Service units that have been dedicated. So we have current agreements that we can render emergency assistance to locals and state outside the boundaries through specific statutes, but our enforcement abilities are limited to the park in general. So, and at Acadia National Park, we have a mix of permanent and seasonal staff that help us out with we're the only employees with the Park Service that perform the law enforcement function. We have other employees that handle maintenance and interpretation, education, administration, everything that makes the park go, just like every other agency here, I'm assuming. We dabble in a little bit of everything. So our primary focus is protection of natural resources and visitor safety. Most all of us are EMTs, search and rescue technicians, and wildland fire. So we do a lot of collateral duty things as well.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Darren.
Yep.
So you're our federal representative here. So a little bit different maybe for you, and maybe we'll go back down the line this way, but I'd love to hear a little bit about how you all ended up in your positions. So was there a specific education that you took, or how did you sort of find yourself in the position you're in now? And was there training you needed before you became the conservation law enforcement officers that you are now? And I think a different question is that I'll ask later is sort of more of what's the ongoing training like in your position? So Darren, I know federal jobs are a little bit different than state jobs and getting into that world. So what was that like for you?
Yep. So a little briefly about me. I went to college at the University of Maine at Presque Isle, get a bachelor's degree in park management. Some of the trainings that I've been through to get where I'm at, to be a commissioned law enforcement officer with the National Park Service. It's a little bit confusing. I'll try to give you the simple version. Our seasonal workforce has to go to a seasonal law enforcement academy currently. It's over 650 hours. It's a basic law enforcement academy. Once you get through the academy, you'll be hired on at a park that advertises jobs, and you'll go through a background process for that. And then once you arrive at your duty location, you'll go through kind of a mini field training program. And then once you're signed off on that, then you're good for solo patrol. That happens at the park you're hired at. When you attain a permanent job for the Park Service, you need to attend the Land Management Police Training Program at FLETC in Georgia. That's currently, I think, 18 weeks of a law enforcement academy there, followed by 11 weeks of a field training program at a field training park across the country. So you could be assigned anywhere, really. Once you successfully complete that, then you back to your home unit and away you go. So it used to be that you would kind of put your time in, you'd work a couple seasonal jobs, build your resume up, you know, get a lot of certifications of all those hats that I was talking about, and you kind of get, you know, build yourself a good reputation and then kind of apply out to get a permanent job. Now the Park Service is trying to do more of central hiring and direct to flexi hiring. So they're starting to advertise for you, submit your resume for the current openings, like the national cert, if you will, or certificate. And then if you make the list, then you get to go to flexi and start your training on day one. And then once you go through what I just told you, then you actually get back to the park you're going to be working at. So it's a little bit different for us, and it's still kind of some things to get worked out there. But for right now, basically you apply for a permanent opening, and a park will, hire you. And then at some point, if you're coming from another seasonal job, you might still have that commission with you, and they can work you at the home unit until you get a seat at the training academy, and then you go through the field training at that point too. So I know I just said a lot, and it can be kind of confusing, and it takes a while. I mean, it's definitely, and for good reason. I mean, we handle a lot of things, so, and it's an important position. So the training is very crucial to that, and we do a pretty good job at that, I think. So.
All right, grad.
Right.
Wonderful. All right, Malcolm, what about you? What was your education background and how you ended up here?
Sure. So I actually went to University of Maine in Machias. I studied biology there for 4 years, got my bachelor's degree. And I ended up finding out about this job actually through alumni email. I didn't really know what the position entailed, but I looked into it, said, oh, could be interesting. I ended up applying, going through the process. I think one of the requirements to become a forest ranger, you do need to have some educational background in natural science. It was just, I believe it's 15 credit hours of natural science or associate's degree equivalent. So I went through the hiring process, which involved several interviews, a PT test, and let's see what else. It had a polygraph exam, and once we got through all that, it was probably about 8 months of the actual waiting for everything to go through. So it's quite a lengthy process to get hired. So after that, we had our Ranger Training Academy, which we do it a little bit differently now. Actually, all Rangers are going to the BLEPI now rather than doing our own in-house academy, which is, just so you guys know, is the standard law enforcement training academy, the basic academy. So once get through that, we're constantly training. I've been on for 3 years now, and there's still training every single year. Whether that be wildland fire training, law enforcement training, it's
Ongoing.
But yeah, it's ongoing training for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I similar to these guys, I went to Unity College and got a bachelor's degree in conservation law enforcement, and then was a police officer for a little while in a couple small towns. But I had really started, I was a deputy game warden for the Maine Warden Service doing the whitewater for several years, and then became a game warden. So I was a game warden for 29 years, retired as a lieutenant out of the Greenville division. And in fact, one point he was in my division. And basically I had done everything a game warden could do. So, and the Warden Service has a very good system of bringing people up, and I was just holding people up. So I decided to retire, and the Baxter job came open, and I put in for that and took it. And so that's how I got where I am at Baxter, basically bringing my experience and stuff there. And I would say that get your college degree. Everybody's got to go through the same thing. You gotta go through a polygraph, you gotta go through a psychological exam, all that stuff to get hired by any police agency in the state now. And then go work your way up. Okay, and there's all kinds of training now for leadership and law enforcement and a lot of good training. And I attended a lot of that training through the Warden Service.
Yeah. And I think you said this, but when did you start at Baxter?
I started Baxter in June of 2020.
All right.
At the height of coronavirus.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Awesome. So how did you end up where you are?
So my route to this job is a little bit different. I grew up in Maine. I grew up hunting, fishing, hiking, paddling, like all the outdoor stuff, and loved being outside, and really wanted to do something where I could protect those resources, ensure that someday my future kids would be able to enjoy those as well. After high school, I went in the military. And after getting out of the military, I ended up going to school in Virginia, getting a degree in criminal justice and business, and eventually got back to Maine, worked as a police officer for a short time, for about 6 months before applying to the Warden Service. And I've been a game warden for about 8 years. It's the best job in the world. No offense. I haven't done your job, so I'm sure they're really good too. This is the best job I've ever had. And as far as training goes for us, it's similar, like the forest rangers, or any state law enforcement. Go to the BLEPI, the Basic Law Enforcement Training Program, which is an 18-week police academy in Vassalboro, Maine. After the new game wardens graduate from there, they go to a 14-week warden school where they learn law enforcement techniques, skills specific to the Warden Service. And then after that, I spend 12 weeks in field training where they're working with experienced game wardens who teach them just the day-to-day, work of the job in a one-on-one environment. I think some of the most important qualities for someone who wants to get in this line of work are some of the intangibles, like we all have college degrees and we don't see a lot of people get hired without them, but the Warden Service actually doesn't even have a requirement for one. Like I said, we don't hire a lot of people who don't have degrees, but the things that we absolutely need when we hire someone, we need to see are character. I think it's the same. I would venture for all of our jobs. We work very independently, oftentimes set our own schedules. And the supervision needs to trust that we're doing what we're supposed to. We're self-motivated. So we need people with really good character, integrity, some of those kind of intangible qualities. A strong work ethic is an absolute must, again, because you're oftentimes directing your own work. And if you don't have good work ethic, then you're not gonna be a good game warden. And then just the outdoor skills. We hire people who aren't experts in all fields, but the more experience you have in pursuits like hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, anything that gets you outdoors, just familiarity with the woods, the stuff, the natural resources that we have is beneficial in this job. We do so many different things in so many different environments and all different seasons. And like I said, if someone's weak in one area, we can bring them up to speed. If you're into a bunch of different outdoor things, but you haven't really hunted a lot, we can bring you up to speed on that. But if you've never done much in the outdoors, it would be hard to get hired as a game warden.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Thank you. Well, this is good. This is a very good segue. So thank you. A very good segue for my next questions, which are some of the entry requirements to conservation law enforcement positions. So like Malcolm, you mentioned the PT test. So could you maybe talk, and that is actually probably similar for, because is it a BLEPI test?
Yes. Well, our PT test is kind of different because it's not just for the BLEPI standards, but it's actually for thorough wildland firefighting standards. So we do our PT test annually just to maintain what's called our red card, which is essentially what allows us to go out west or anywhere in the country on a national incident. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
can you just explain what it is? Because I wonder if people are thinking about this, like, how many push-ups do I?
Oh,
need
the
to be able
actual
to do?
PT
Yeah.
test. So I think if you're 18 to 29, I believe it's 33 push-ups in a minute, 40 sit-ups. And then it's a run, which is 1.5 miles, and you have to do that in 11 minutes and 20 something seconds. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, so it's fairly arduous. I mean, you definitely have to prepare yourself for it. It's not something you can just walk in if you don't physically maintain yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's one of the requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it similar for the warden service?
Yeah, that testing you're describing is the state law enforcement
Yeah.
one, and yeah, it's a standard test. Like you said, those numbers sound right to me, and anyone that goes to that BLEPI, the Police Academy in Maine, has to pass that test to enter the 40th percentile. So, and then to graduate, you have to reach the 50th percentile. And again, all these jobs, like, you have to have a level of physical fitness. We all do search and rescue work on some level, and when someone needs to be rescued or helped, we need to be fit enough to go in there and take care of that.
Yeah, yeah. Is it similar for Acadia?
Similar, so for all National Park Service rangers coming in on their initial position, before they go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center for the Academy, they have to have a passing score on the Physical Efficiency Battery, or PEB is what we call it. That consists of basically 5 tests, but 3 of only which we measure. One is the max bench press, so 1 rep max on a bench press. Another component is called the Illinois Agility Run, which is basically just it's a running test, a sprint test, where you get to slalom through some cones in an amount of time, and then a 1.5 mile run under a certain amount of time. Your scoring depends on your age and gender brackets, usually in 5-year increments, of all those folks that have gone through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center at FLETC, and you have to score in the 25th percentile or higher of all of those folks. So, and you can look that right up online to see what the scores are. And that's ever changing as more and more people graduate from the academy, but I mean, it's minuscule, so you get a good idea of what you need to do there. Once you complete it, at this point, you're kind of grandfathered in. So once you become a permanent ranger, you just have to participate year to year. At Acadia, I'm the fitness instructor there, and we traditionally give out like either star awards or time off awards for good performance. So we try to, that's crucial to our job, just like it is with theirs. You know, we got to be physically fit, and then you're less susceptible to injury and all those things, you know, looking from an administrative side of the house there. So yeah, that's kind of the basics on that. And then we also have, I'm sure these guys do too, a pre-employment medical that you have to pass, and that's on a 3-year cycle once that goes through as well. So that consists of a few different components. But
so one thing I've heard, well, all of you mentioned is there's background checks required, and polygraph exams as well to be a law enforcement officer. Can you walk us through a little bit about what that involves? And I think maybe some folks that maybe are hearing this might go, uh-oh, you know, I got pulled over for speeding that one time. You know, what are the kinds of things that maybe are not a big deal and versus are a big deal with background checks?
So for us, once someone makes it in the hiring process to the background investigation phase, they have a game warden who gets assigned to them for 3 or 4 weeks to work on their background investigation package. And they'll meet with you and give you a questionnaire with lots and lots of questions on it of all different areas of life. Have you ever done this and that? Work history, education history, talk to a lot of references, family, friends, neighbors, and basically just trying to figure out what kind of person you are, and also if there's any disqualifying conduct. So there's certain crimes that would be disqualifying. So if you had committed a felony, then you'd be disqualified from even going to the police academy in most circumstances. And it's all case dependent. so so you're looking for those big things that would be absolutely disqualifying. Everyone has made a couple bad choices in their life. So when we're doing one of those investigations, oftentimes you find some of those things, and then it's working through them and looking at, okay, what did they do after they made a mistake? Did they change? Did they start to do better? What's the pattern of their decision making been in their life? So really, I think the background investigation, other than looking for those big kind of disqualifying conduct things, is really trying to figure out what kind of person you are, and if you're growing and improving as a person, or if you've been making mistakes right along. One of the things that we have to look at is your fishing game history. So if you've been violating hunting and fishing laws all your life, right up to the day you applied to us, then there's a good chance we, are going to have some issues with that. So that's another area that we focus on quite a bit.
Yeah. Kevin, do you have anything to add about what background check process might be like?
Ours is very similar to the Warden Service, and with any law enforcement job, we're looking for those core qualities of being a good person, having integrity, being compassionate, things like that. So that's what we're trying to get to. And if when you take the psychological test and the polygraph, we're out of it. Okay. The examiners are the people that either say you passed or you didn't. And that's basically, there's nothing you can do on the psychological. So you just take the test. That's all you can do. And the background is, you just lay it out there and say everything you've done. Answer as truthfully as possible.
Yeah.
And we'll make the decision. So
yeah. Darren, do you have anything to add from the federal point of view on that?
Yes, we're a little bit different. We currently do not do a polygraph. The background usually is contracted out through the Office of Personnel Management, but the final say-so is kind of handled at the Washington level. Things for us, and I'm sure with these guys too, also domestic violence convictions, you have to be able to possess a firearm. So if you can't possess a firearm, you're going to be disqualified. Another one for us is drug use. Federally, marijuana is not recognized. It's still a crime there. So, use of marijuana within I believe it's 3 years is going to get looked at. So if you guys are thinking about a federal job, at least at this point, that's going to come up and probably back you up a little bit. Currently is how that's looked at. Things may change, I don't know, but that's kind of our current system that we'll get in place. So I would say, you need to be able to possess a firearm, keep your nose clean. We're looking for the same type of qualities, maturity, good ethics, be honest, be truthful, because the minute you get caught in a lie, then that's going to be a disqualifying factor for probably any job you go look at. So
yeah, not just conservation law enforcement.
Pretty much.
Right.
That's universal.
Yeah. So one of the things I know about your jobs is that they are hugely varied depending on the time of year, depending on what's going on, what the agency's priorities might be, if there's special events or special circumstances. And so I actually wrote down what is a typical day like, and then I realized that's a terrible question because there is no typical day. So I guess I'm gonna ask a little bit of a different question to try to get at what is your job like? So just what's the most challenging part of your job and what's the most fun part of your job?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So I think one of the most challenging parts is some of the investigations that we work on. There's, like I talked about before, about protecting our natural resources, and there's people who have the exact opposite goal, and that's to take our natural resources and take as much as they want with no consideration for others. And some of them that are very intentional in that pursuit are pretty hard to catch. And I think one of the most challenging parts is figuring out how to catch them and hold them accountable and stop the activity that they're partaking in. So that's pretty challenging. Sometimes it involves a lot of work, a lot of writing, sometimes search warrants, things like that, to get the evidence we need to, like I said, stop someone, hold them accountable. It's kind of, for me, it's a really fun challenge. It's you never know where something like that's going to lead you, but it's pretty fun to successfully do that. Again, the whole goal is protecting the resources that we all really value. Most fun part of the job, it's fun when you do catch one of those people like that. I really enjoy the search and rescue aspect of our job as well. Like I said, I worked in conventional law enforcement for a town for about 6 months, and there, almost every interaction I had with people was for a negative reason. They did something wrong, so that's why you were talking to them. In this job, one of the really neat things is when you get to help someone, and working in the search and rescue field, when someone calls, they want you there, and they're in trouble and really need help, and they're having a bad day. And it's pretty fun when you can go and use your abilities and your training to orchestrate a rescue to help them out. And just most people are pretty thankful after that. So that's pretty fun for me.
Nice. Good. Yeah.
So yeah, Baxter is unique in that some of the challenges are there's very few easy rescues on Baxter. Okay, so a lot of what we do is rescue known location. Okay, I'm on the A-ball trail, I broke my ankle. Okay, so we kind of know where they are. The question is, how are we going to get them down? And so those are always very intricate emergencies that we deal with, and there's never usually anybody right where we need them. And so you're talking a couple hour before you even maybe get to see the patient, and you have to try to make decisions. We really don't know the answers. You're just kind of like, this is what I think is going on. The good part about Baxter is we deal a lot of positive interaction. It's not so much stopping people, even though we do tell people to slow down a lot in the park. But it's just basically, hey, why don't you slow down a little bit, okay? Getting people where they need to be because they're turned around, not so much lost, but looking for where they're supposed to be. And then able to walk into a lot of backcountry ponds and do traditional fish and game enforcement on really brook trout heritage waters that are we have to watch what happens there. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say the most challenging part of my job as a forest ranger is wildland fire. Not is it only incredibly strenuous physically, it's also very difficult mentally too, because you're working with a crew of people trying to suppress a wildfire. So working on a wildland fire, it's a lot of labor. I mean, you're hiking into the woods with equipment, potentially a 50, 60 pound pump on top of whatever other supplies you're carrying. As a ranger, our job is not only just to suppress the fire, we're actually most of the time leading a crew and directing people to do different tasks on the fire to help suppress it and contain the fire. So you don't only have to worry about yourself when you're on a wildland fire, you're worrying about the safety of your crew. You're making sure everyone's staying hydrated, everyone has everything they need. You're thinking about escape routes in case the fire starts to go wrong, how to get out of there. You're monitoring communications with everyone, your supervisors, your crew, other rangers that may be coming to the fire, monitoring communications with aircraft. So working on a fire, there's a lot coming at you very quickly. And you need to be able to make very timely decisions based on what's happening. And because it's not only your life and your safety that's at risk, it's everyone that you're working with, including the public too, if there's a large fire. But actually, I would say I enjoy the challenge personally. I think that's the fun aspect of my job, is trying to balance all of that stuff going on at once. Because it's very rewarding once you actually get a fire out, you get a sense of achievement that you've done that. And I just love working outside and yeah. So that's what I'd say is the most challenging and fun parts of my job is,
And the most fun.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Thanks. What do you think, Darren?
So I would echo a couple of things too. I think a lot of the rewarding parts of what I think back on my career is being able to help somebody that really needed it, that's really rewarding, or, making a really good case that helped to, it's got a direct nexus to the mission that you signed up for, protecting resources, but also visitor protection too. So Acadia specifically, so I mean, the National Park Service runs a gamut in different units and what you might be doing there. So that's challenging in itself, but it's also a great opportunity to, you might be on the seashore, you might be at a national monument, you might be at Acadia, you might be out in the desert on the border, wide range of stuff that you might be tasked with. That's a huge challenge, and trying to stay proficient at all of those hats that we wear is very challenging, whether it's technical rescue or providing care to somebody at, EMS. And then also your law enforcement skills, like anything else, if you're not staying up to speed on those, they deteriorate just like anything else. So, and that's very important to stay up on those. So, I mean, along with these guys, I'm sure we train year round. So that's a challenge, and trying to find the time to actually do what you signed up for besides the training can be a challenge too. So trying to balance your time effectively. At Acadia National Park specifically, we saw, I think, over 4 million visitors last year, and we're just over 33,000 acres. That's a lot of people, probably within a 10-month span. So it's elbow to elbow. So the big challenge there is you want to have as many people as possible enjoy the resource, but to what cost? Is it actually taking away from that experience? So that's a big challenge that we're facing right now, is trying to preserve and protect those resources, but also have an enjoyable visit for a visitor to come in and be able to find a place to park and not see where the historic roads have been just eroded away by traffic and just trampling down. There's a few places by the end of the summer that you can find an entrance sign to the park, and you can just see that the thousands of people that have been there to take that photo, right? Because the grass is gone. And so that's a big challenge for us to try to maintain that and conserve it for future generations, basically. So,
Yeah. For sure.
And law enforcement in general too, you're gonna have some really bad days. You're gonna see some pretty bad stuff. That can be challenging, but on the flip side, it balances out with the rewarding days too, I feel. So, you're going to want to have a good foundation around you, friends, family, because it's a difficult job at times. So I would just throw that out there too.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, let's open it up. Do people have questions? Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
have a question. So I guess I've had a little bit of experience doing like officer stuff, and I was wondering like how much of your time you feel like you're kind of on call, I guess, like you don't necessarily have like a fire or something or an investigation. Like what are you doing in like for that, I guess?
Yeah.
You ask what you're doing when you don't have an actual like call you're going to.
Like I felt like sometimes you have like necessarily don't have like a specific thing you need to do, but like for the day, I guess.
Yeah.
So as a game warden, it's very proactive. So sometimes you have an investigation you're working on, or a task, or a call that you're going to, but the majority of the time we work proactively. So I would, if a day like today I didn't have anything I had to do, I would probably think of my district and have a few waters where there's a lot of heavy ice fishing activity, maybe a trail, a lot of snowmobile activity, and I would go patrol that area. Check people's, maybe check fishing licenses and catch a fish, might be doing some surveillance, watching for violations, maybe just being seen on the snowmobile trails to try to, have law enforcement presence so people ride safely. So a lot of proactive work, and really that's up to me to decide. There's almost never someone telling me you need to go do this today. It's usually up to me to look at my district and decide what should I be doing today. So it's proactive patrol.
Yeah, same thing in Baxter. I would say it's more in spring fishing, summer season, that in hunting right now. we have some ice fishing in the park, but very limited. So a lot of times what we're doing in the park right now is we're actually getting supplies into our backcountry campgrounds, like Russell Pond, which is 8 miles from any road, or Chimney Pond, which is 3 miles up, which you can snowmobile into those places. It's extreme snowmobiling, but we have to get supplies in and supplies out. And so a lot of times that is what we're trying to do right now, is get all that stuff in and out right now. And hopefully the trails, because we need a certain base and it needs to stay there for a while for us to do that. So if we don't have any snow like we did in the beginning of the winter, and now it's getting warm and we're getting rain, we have very limited windows now to do that. So we're rushing to get that stuff done.
Yeah, so as a forest ranger, there's always something that we could be working on. We maintain our own equipment, so you could be working on your pump, testing equipment, make sure everything that you're responsible for is working properly. Another thing we do is inspections, where we check timber harvest, and that's a very proactive thing that we need to do. Is that just involves going on the state database and checking timber harvest, make sure that there's no theft going on at the harvest site when the cutters aren't there, harvesters aren't there. There's just so much variation in my job. Like right now, I'm actually working on coding like a new inspection app that we do. So it's crazy. We do so many different things. But yeah, so there's always something to do. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Just curious, how often do you guys either work with each other or other law enforcement agencies if there's a certain problem within a certain town district or something that's in your area?
So Baxter, we're constantly working with the Warden Service and the Forest Service. Okay. The local rangers there, we talk to them all the time, see them, call up with information. Same with the local PDs there, and the other law enforcement, sheriffs and state police. So so there's a lot of collaboration between the agencies on our different missions, because we're the initial forest fire attack too for the park. So they come and train us. We have to keep those certifications. And we do our own search and rescue in the park until it gets to a certain point, and then the Warden Service comes in and helps us. They take it over. So we're constantly have those collaborations with our other partners.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that happens,
Absolutely.
Forest Service aircraft helps with search and rescue, or so there's a lot of that.
Yeah, we all work together. Even state police, if they're looking for a vehicle and you're happen to be in the area, just go on the radio and notify them what's happening, back them up if they need it. I think all agencies work quite well together in the state. I would say so.
Yeah. Does the Forest Service help Acadia with fire?
Well, I suppose they could. They help us with rescues a lot too.
Yeah.
With short haul.
Yeah.
We use the National Guard, the Coast Guard, Warden Service when we have big searches, ongoing searches. They're great coming in to help us with that. We also use local volunteer search and rescue groups that are crucial to what we do in the summer. They're our bread and butter when we have litter carryouts and stuff, because we just don't have the personnel to effectively get people from A to B sometimes. So, but yeah, Acadia National Park is concurrent jurisdiction, so all state and locals have state authority within the boundaries of the park as well. So that makes it great, because we can ask for assistance and they can come in and do what they need to do too.
Yeah.
So that's very beneficial for us to have in our back pocket too. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
So for someone who's looking to be involved in one of these agencies in the future, what are some employment opportunity suggestions that you should really be looking for to try and get involved?
I think for the Warden Service, we like to see someone who has some law enforcement experience. Yes, not mandatory, but with this, there's some people who are really good with some of the outdoor things, but we don't know how they'll be as a law enforcement officer. There's so many different hats we wear, And I think that's one of the challenging ones sometimes, have just the necessary traits to be a good, just regular law enforcement officer on top of all the game warden stuff we do. And so we like to see that when someone has a little bit of experience with that, which is a really easy thing to get in Maine, because almost the majority of departments in Maine hire reserve police officers, which send you to a pretty short training. It's a couple weeks that allow you to work in a limited way. And it's a really good experience to get under your belt. Any sort of outdoor type field, working with people is really important. We really, we kind of manage fish and wildlife, but even more so, we manage people. It's the people's interactions with the environment that is really at the crux of what we do. So most of all is having a good work history, something in the outdoors. Law enforcement's great, but having a solid work history that we can look at is really important.
I know some people have to get to class, and our conversation is coming to an end here. Would you recommend like seasonal jobs, Darren, for someone interested in federal?
I would.
Or
That's
Baxter too?
Yeah, I
both of you.
would. That's something that they can do on their own as well. Like they don't have to be sponsored by a park beforehand. So it's a little bit backwards, but it's a good opportunity to kind of get your foot in the door too. And then also just to echo that, even your work history, if you show some kind of commitment to whatever it is you're doing and not just kind of skipping around, like that's okay. And it might diversify your skills some too, but also as a hiring manager, I'm looking, okay, how long did so-and-so work for so-and-so? And then referencing is really big. So, if you establish a good work ethic in any job you do, your future employer should be reaching out to get a reference on like, how did this person do, and try to, as close as you can get that experience to what you want to do is going to be even better. So if you've had prior law enforcement experience, for us, if you've worked on an ambulance or a fire crew, so I know you're squared away with as an EMT, stuff like that, search and rescue experience, wildland fire, structured fire. Those are all extras that's going to push you over the top when it comes down to looking at people on the list,
Yeah. And there's seasonal work at Baxter.
Yeah,
too,
seasonal work at Baxter. In fact, 2 of our enforcement agents have worked, started seasonally and worked their way up to law enforcement ranger. And there are other organizations, I would echo what Darren said there, which is like there's several search and rescue volunteer groups in the area here. You guys can do that because it's going to get you, you're going to learn search and rescue tactics and skills, and it's going to get you into working with law enforcement. And you're going to go on things that people don't normally go on. Doing seasonal jobs. I know the Warden Service has some seasonal jobs. Acadia does. I don't know about, but Parks and Land. So anything like that. The reserve officer, I started there as a reserve officer many years ago. Any of those are going to help you, and you're always going to learn. Any of those jobs, you're going to pick up little things, breadcrumbs that are going to help you to where you want to be. It's going to help you realize what you want to be. So.
Awesome. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you mentioned our seasonal jobs. One of the really neat opportunities that we hire a lot of our full-time wardens from is our deputy game warden program, where you can work for a summer. It's kind of set up to work for a college schedule as a deputy game warden with limited capacity. Usually it's doing boating enforcement. Like Kevin said, he did it doing whitewater enforcement when he was a game warden, and it's a really neat opportunity to get foot in the door and learn about the job and us to learn about you.
Yeah. And the Forest Service has call when needed firefighters.
Yes, we do. So every spring through summertime, sometimes in the fall too, we'll hire call when needed firefighters. So if there's a wildland fire incident, we'll call you up and ask you to come help us work on the fire. And that's huge for us. I mean, because our job is, and as well as law enforcement, I mean, it's half fire, half law enforcement. So you have to kind of know both trades, I would say.
There's only a few of you in a very large state with a lot of trees.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's true.
When there's a fire, you need more people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I wish we could keep chatting, but thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Anyone, students here, students online, you can always reach out to me for follow-up questions, but also Lisa in the back works at the Career Center and has a ton of experience with outdoor careers. So Thank you so much for joining us,
Absolutely.
and have a good day, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.